questions about the exchange agreement or to talk about the next document and then take them all together. Any pressing questions about the exchange agreement? Hearing none. Yes, Mr. Castillo.
Thank you, Ms. Minson. The word dedicate comes up a lot in this document.
Yes.
And what I have to admit, I've never seen that in real estate documents. What does it mean to have things like dedicating land?
My understanding and part of why Jeremy Root was involved is he is a land lawyer and does this every day. It's giving a certain purpose for the land. So I know the next document, the deed that's redividing the property, talks about specific dedications and rededications of the property. And those rededications include public access for utilities and easements that are necessary. One of the attachments to the deed of lease actually shows all of those dedications. So it is on board docs, it is a small document, but it shows where all the roads are located, where all of the easements are located, where there's supposed to be utilities. Does that partially answer your question?
Well, I guess if there's an easement, there's an easement, so you don't need to dedicate it to have the easement, right? Dedication doesn't imply particular use, because that would be what zoning's for, right?
That's true, but there is a specific dedication within the deed of re-subdivision, vacation, rededication, dedications, and conveyances that specifically dedicates the easement in this legal document for public access and utilities. So whether it's there, was there before, it is being rededicated in the second document that's before the board.
Okay, I'll take you at your word there.
And I'm also happy to, part of the language that's before the board tonight is that the board is going to be approving these subject to any non-material changes recommended by the superintendent. So if you do want to reach out to Mr. Root, I'm happy to put you in touch with him, since this is what he does every day, and he might be able to assuage your concerns as it comes to dedications.
No, I don't think that'll be necessary. Thanks.
Okay. Anything else on the exchange agreement? All right, the deed of re-subdivision, vacation, rededication, dedications, and conveyances is the second document before the board tonight. This is quite similar to what was presented to the board at the work session on June 18th. The major changes here were to add a definition to school board parcel D, make that a defined term to make it more consistent throughout the document, and then to add the legal descriptions of the land that was being conveyed based on the title search. Any questions about this deed of re-subdivision? And those go hand in hand, those first two documents go hand in hand with the deed of lease. And in working through this with Ms. McCoskey and Mr. Root, who have been immensely helpful, we realized that we are going to be, the city will be owning the land, part of the land that the school is located on until the new high school is built. So we've put together a deed of lease that shows the city is leasing that land back to the school board at no cost until the date in which we believe the new high school will be finished, and it'll be time to hand over the land to the city so the economic development team can demolish the high school and then have the economic development portion built. So on page 4, you'll see that there is rent outlaid beginning on August 4th, 2021. This is consistent with the comprehensive agreement that the city entered into with EYA, providing for payment per day for leasing back the high school in the unlikely event of a catastrophic incident. The rent would be escalated as of that first day of August 4th, 2021, to be $7,000 per day through July 31st, 2023. We have confirmed that our insurance would cover any amounts that are owed up to $10 million, so certainly for the $7,000 a day for the 2.5 years, if it came to that. So we would be covered by insurance in the unlikely event that something happened to the new high school before we were able to move students in, so we could stay in the current George Mason High School, but EYA would be compensated for their inability to begin their project on time as planned. So it took some finagling and some creative thinking to work in how do we make sure that we pay the city back for any damages that they will then owe to EYA in the event that EYA is not able to start on time. So that's why there's the escalated rent provisions in here. But otherwise, we tried to make this as straightforward as possible, where the city will be the landlord, but it's still our property, our maintenance will be maintaining it, our schools will be going on there until we no longer need that space and are moved into the new high school.
Can I just
Absolutely.
further add to what you've already said, and just to even clarify, I think, for anyone who might be watching at home, we have insurance, we have construction insurance. So during the construction project, if something happens, Gilbane's construction, insurance pays for that. This insurance that Ms. Minson is contemplating is after we've taken possession of the building. So all of the construction is done. We now own it. Substantial completion is over, and we are getting ready to move in. So the window of opportunity for something catastrophic to happen is literally a week, maybe two, of time. So this insurance would pick up that 1 to 2 week window between when we take possession of the building and when we are moving into the building. One reason that window could be extended, however, is if there is, Gilbane doesn't have to complete the project and give us substantial completion until the summer of 2021. They're pushing really hard to get it to us early, but if, for example, Gilbane were to substantially complete the building in March and we couldn't move until the summer, that would extend that period of time where we would be at risk, but we do have the insurance during that period of time. So I just want to make sure that that's clear, that it really is just for the time after we've taken possession of the building, substantial completion is done, and we're getting ready to move in.
So I know those documents are quite lengthy, but happy to take any questions on either specifically the deed of lease with the city or the other two, the exchange agreement or the deed of re-subdivision.
It will surprise nobody to know I've got a few questions on these, I'm sure. But I guess I'll start with a very top-level one. What's the order of operations for the signing of these three documents to make sure that they all come together right?
We will sign them all at the same time. I don't know if the city signed them last night or if they were still making one or two minor tweaks to it, but once we get a signed copy from them, we will sign and then hold them in escrow until they go to closing and they're recorded. So they'll be signed and recorded all together, but we'll hold on to them until we pass them along and have a title company there. We do have title insurance for covering the land that will now be ours, so that's all already set up and in place once we get that finalized. And the deed of lease was written to give us through August 31st of this year in the event there are some questions or we do see a tweak that we need to make in any of these documents, so we don't have to come back to the board as long as it's not a material change. And then we can still go forward with all three of these documents being recorded and entered into the land records.
Okay, thanks. A couple of things down into looking at the lease for getting the school.
Sure.
I'm just trying to make sure I understand, under section 7 in the alterations, this is
Yes.
on page 6. 7.2 says that any permitted 7.1 describes what a list of permitted alterations would be, including replacements, repairs, et cetera. And then 7.2 says that any permitted alteration shall be performed by independent, duly qualified, licensed, insured, and bonded contractors. I just want to make sure that there's a common understanding. Does that in any way say that facilities staff are not allowed to do sort of routine maintenance in any sort of a form?
No, it's our expectation that facility staff will be doing it, and that provision does say it's those contractors selected by tenant and tenant's sole discretion. So if we determine that we want our facility staff to do it, our facility staff will be able to maintain the building.
Okay, I think that, and then you already addressed the question I was going to ask about the rent, which basically was, do we have sufficient cover in case any of those circumstances were to kick in? So I'll let that one go, I think. Thank you very much. And I will just say, on just thank you very much for all the hard work that I know that you and Mr. Root have put in on this one, and the work that Carly and Carol have put in on this one. It's been a tremendous amount of work, I know, and watching it go through has been very impressive. So thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board before we move on to the resolutions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just noticed after reading along with
Yes.
Vice Chair about the discussion of 7.2.
Yes.
7.3 talks about the premises is in substantial compliance with the requirements of ADA.
Yes.
And how is that possible, given what the premises are?
My understanding is that the premises are in compliance with the ADA currently as required when the new construction, when different pieces of the high school were renovated. So this isn't saying that right now it's fully ADA compliant, but it technically is because the last renovations that were made to the project had at the time, ADA requirements in place.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
All right, if there are no further questions or comments, we'll move on to, start with 7.04, the signing of the land exchange agreement between Falls Church City School Board and Falls Church City, Virginia. Would someone please move to authorize the chair to sign the land exchange agreement? Shauna?
I move that the school board authorize the school board chair to sign the land exchange agreement between the Falls Church City School Board and the City of Falls Church, Virginia, as presented, subject to changes approved by the superintendent that do not adversely affect the school board's position.
Thank you, Ms. Russell. Is there a second? Second. Thank you, Ms. Liddon. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstained? Great, thank you very much. Next, 7.05, signing of the deed of re-subdivision, vacation, rededication, dedications, and conveyance. Would someone please read that motion?
I move that the school board authorize the school board chair to sign the deed of subdivision, or re-subdivision, vacation, rededication, dedications, and conveyances between the Falls Church City School Board and the City of Falls Church, Virginia, as presented, subject to changes approved by the superintendent that do not adversely affect the school board's position.
Thank you, Ms. Russell. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? All right. Last one, the signing of the deed of lease between Falls Church City School Board and Falls Church City, Virginia. Mr. Webb?
Madam Chair, I move that the school board give authorization to the superintendent to enter into a deed of lease with the City of Falls Church, Virginia, for the purpose of leasing the space of the existing George Mason High School at 7124 Leesburg Pike, Falls Church, Virginia, as presented, subject to changes approved by the superintendent that do not adversely affect the school board's position.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Russell. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed or abstained? Great, thank you very much. That's a pretty historic 3 resolutions that we just authorized. So, thank you, Ms. Aubrey. All right, next on the agenda, 7.07, second reading and adoption of policies. Ms. Minson.
Good evening. The policies for second reading tonight are those that were brought last month in June. The first 3 relate to textbook selection, adoption, and purchase. The first of those is policy IIAA. This is one piece of our new proposed model policy that would replace the current policy 6.17. And as Jeannie Seabridge and I shared last meeting, it's quite consistent with what we currently do. It goes above and beyond what the 6.17 policy had required, and there were no changes to this policy IIAA after the last meeting. Are there any questions about this first policy, textbook selection, adoption, and purchase? Hearing none. The second textbook policy is policy IIA. This is the breakout of policy 6.17, discussing instructional materials. We did add the word "to" on line 11, but otherwise there were no changes to this policy on the adoption of instructional materials from last meeting. Any questions on policy IIA? All right. The last textbook selection policy is IIAB, supplementary material selection and adoption. There were also no changes from the last meeting